So for the rest of the class, we will be going over pitching and your personal pitches for your first story. So in order to tell you what I would expect from a verbal pitch, we'll talk really quickly about what would be included in a verbal pitch within a newsroom setting. Now, pitching happens all the time. It's a daily practice, sometimes multiple times a day in journalism. You would do it during newsroom meetings, pitch sessions, and even job interviews. So if you're going to interview for an internship or a professional job, make sure you have some pitch ideas ready, because that was something I would always ask my candidates. And if they could not come up with 2 or 3 story ideas during our pitch meeting, not a candidate I want in my newsroom. So the idea of a pitch, especially a verbal pitch as opposed to a written one, is to sell your story, to be persuasive enough to tell the news director and leadership that your story should get resources devoted to it. You need to do that very quickly and succinctly, like 2 to 4 sentences. Usually you get like 5 to 10 seconds to be able to share your pitch. So the most important things to share, of course, are your 5 W's and your H, and emphasize the why it matters. You should be emphasizing why this matters to your audience. Why would I care is the main question you need to be answering. And that's not only for your audience and why your audience should care about it, but also why your organization would care about it, right? So think about it in terms of the business of news. Will this get us more ratings? Will this allow us to have opportunity for very visual storytelling? Is this an enterprise story that only we will have, right? So think about the things that make it a value to your newsroom as well as to your audience. Now, if I were thinking about ideas to pitch, one of the first things that I would do is go and look at different news that has come out during the day and try to localize it, right? That's something that I would always do as a producer. So yesterday I was putting together this presentation, or Wednesday, I think actually, and came across a scientific health research study that said 61% of COVID patients who experience a loss of senses recover fully after 2 months, right? So how would I go about pitching this story in a newsroom? Well, I would start by digging in to see other aspects, because is a scientific health story really enough to base like a full feature package on? Probably not, right? Like it's great to have expertise, but you also want to have color, you want to have description, you want to have something that people can connect to. So then I went on social media and, just kind of browsed around on the interwebs and found that there are lots of Reddit threads, blog posts about recipes, like home remedies for recovering your lost senses. So I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool. I wonder if anyone locally has ever used that. So then I also want to find my sources, right? I want to think about what experts I can talk to. So to connect it back to the medical study, I'm probably not going to be able to get the authors of the actual research study on my air. So the next best thing is to find someone who has expertise in that same area. So for instance, I could use this UAB doctor who is an ENT who deals with senses, like you have to know what kind of medical specialist you're asking for. And he actually has stated that COVID-19 attacks the cells that support our smell detecting neurons, and that's why we lose our sense of smell. So I kind of know what I want him to say. Then I want non-official sources, right? And the way that this story was done on a local broadcast station this week, the journalist crowdsourced through social and said, hey, has anyone had this happen to them? Can I talk to you? And they found Paige Walker of Hamilton, Alabama, who tested positive for COVID in July, and her senses still are not normal. So obviously we're past the 2-month period where we would normally get our senses back. So what is she doing? And she's trying a bunch of home remedies. So in thinking about how so all of that is the research that I've done before I ever walk into the newsroom meeting, right? So I think about who are my 5 W's and the H. The who is COVID patients. What is what happens to them? They lose their sense of smell and taste. Most of them only lose it for 2 months, but some last longer. Where this is happening to all COVID patients around the world, but we want to localize it, right? By finding local officials and those who have experienced it locally. Then we want to pinpoint like time and why that matters. So the study came out today. So that would be the timeliness of the news value. But then we're also talking in terms of like how long it takes. So 2 months of loss, some experience that loss longer. Then why is this story important? Well, people in our community are affected by this regularly. It's one of the most common symptoms of COVID. Many viewers are likely positive or know someone who is, so they would connect to this. It can also be a warning sign. So people who weren't aware that this is a symptom may be like, oh, hey, I kind of lost my sense of smell lately. I wonder if I should go get a COVID test. You know, Elle Woods can't, smell her perfume anymore. She might need to go get her COVID test. So it can help us understand additional aspects of COVID. And the how is it possible to recover these senses with home remedies? So if I walked into a newsroom, this is obviously, you wouldn't write this out. You're not going to like read it off of a page, but this is the summary of what I would say based on all that research and thought that I just put into this pitch. I read a research study today that suggests that a large majority of people who get COVID lose their sense of taste and smell, but almost all recover it within 2 months. Some experts say it can last longer. There's also a lot of information trending on social right now about recipes or home remedies for recovering those lost senses. So I want to speak to local doctors about how we recover taste and smell after COVID, why it happens, as well as someone who's experienced this to share how local patients and doctors are dealing with this. So that's what I would verbally say in a newsroom pitch. So I want you to start thinking about, in terms of your pitch, what does that look like, right? So here are the things that you want to be including within your newsroom pitch. So take just like a minute, like literally a minute, and try to come up with your verbal newsroom pitch. And then we're going to go through the room and you're going to give me your top pitch for your feature one, and we can talk about them as a class, okay? So take your minute. And again, most of this you should have put in that pitch document. That's why I make you do that, to really think through and research your story ideas.